to make things go smoothly. And it looks like we're recording here. So I'm going to go ahead and call this session of the City of Ocean Shores Hearing Examiner to order. For the record, today is April 13th, just after 11 a.m. We have one item on the agenda today. That's number 23-001. A request for approval of a reasonable use exception, or RUE for short, to allow for the development of a 7-building, 14-unit hotel motel facility that would result in impacts to a wetland buffer on an approximately 1.22 acre lot located at 863 Ocean Shores Boulevard Northwest. My name is Peregrine Sorter. I'm a hearing examiner with Sound Law Center, whom the city has selected to hold certain land use hearings like this one. And it will be my role today to collect evidence in the form of exhibits and testimony to determine whether the proposal complies with the city comprehensive plan, zoning ordinances, critical areas ordinances, and the specific criteria for approval of a RUE. To that end, I received and reviewed several exhibits in advance of this hearing. These include the application and project plans, materials related to the environmental review of the proposal, the staff report prepared by city staff, notice materials, a letter from the United States Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA, terminating a consent order previously imposed on this property, comments from the Washington State Department of Ecology, or DOE, and information related to the wetland and wetland buffer at issue in this matter. And I will go ahead and admit these exhibits into the record. Should anyone have any additional exhibits that they would like admitted into the record, please let me know when it is your opportunity to testify, and I will go ahead and address admitting additional exhibits at that time. Speaking of testimony, all testimony today will be under oath or affirmation because, were my decision to be appealed, the recording of today's hearing, along with the admitted exhibits and my written decision, would serve as the foundation for any such appeal. I may ask questions of those who are testifying. I assure you I'm not trying to trip anyone up. I'm just trying to make sure that I have a clear understanding of the proposal so that after the record closes, I am able to produce a decision that is hopefully clear and legally defensible. The order that we typically follow in these hearings, and I believe we will be following today, is first we will hear from city staff, who will provide an overview of the proposal along with any recommendations that the city may have. Following that, we will hear from the applicant and see if there's any additional information they feel that myself or members of the public should be aware of in advance of my decision being issued. After that, any interested members of the public will have an opportunity to testify. And finally, following any such testimony, we will turn back to the applicant and the city as necessary for any response. So with that, I think we can get started. Mr. Reed, let's get you sworn in. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth in the testimony that you give here today?
You.
Thank you. And can you state and spell your name for the audio recording and explain your role at the city?
Yeah, my name is Marshall Reed, M-A-R-S-H-A-L-L. Last name Reed, R-E-A-D, and I serve as the city planner and shoreline administrator for the city of Ocean Shores.
Thank you. And did my summary of the exhibits track with what you were hoping I would review in advance of this hearing?
It did.
And yes, I would just note for the record that, I have worked on several RUE decisions for other jurisdictions, but this would be my first for the city of Ocean Shores. And as Mr. Reed explained at the beginning of the hearing, this is the first RUE proposal that's being heard by the Ocean Shores hearing examiner. So I think this might be a learning process for us all. And with that, Mr. Reed, you can proceed.
Okay, I'm going to start out with my staff report and just kind of give an overview of the location of the property, where it's located. For those of you that are attending the hearing and are not familiar with the history of the parcel, we'll touch on that briefly and then turn it over to Peregrine for questions. So we received application on January 23rd, 2023 for a reasonable use exception to be able to impact wetlands, to impact buffer associated with wetlands at the 863 Ocean Shores Boulevard address. That's parcel number 090100302600. That's Division 1, Block C, Lot 26. The overall lot size is approximately 53,142 square feet. It's currently zoned B1, which is retail commercial. There is no shoreline jurisdiction associated with this parcel. The surrounding parcels in this area for zoning are B1 all the way around. The land use designation, this parcel and project is located in what is referred to as the Gateway Corridor, found in the Ocean Shores Comprehensive Plan. The existing land use in the surrounding properties, to the north, we have private condominiums. To the south, we have private condominiums. To the east, hotel, motel, and undeveloped parcels. And to the west, we have the Dunes Protection Area and the Pacific Ocean. A little bit of background: the subject property addressed at 863 Ocean Shores Boulevard is located in the northwest corner of Ocean Shores. The closest intersecting road is roughly 100 feet north at Cuddy Court Northwest. The property again is zoned B1 and is located in the Gateway Corridor. The Gateway Corridor runs along Point Brown between State Route 115 all the way down to Albatross Streets and the adjacent side streets, which is what picks up this particular subject parcel. The parcel was subject of an enforcement action by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency on April 14th, 2016 for some unauthorized fill of the wetlands that were contained on this parcel. The terms and remediation and monitoring were approved December 31st, 2019 of this violation, and a court order administratively terminating to allow development of the parcel has been provided. The zoning in the immediate area is B1, retail commercial. Hotels, motels are permitted as a use in this district. Notice was given, and the hearing was scheduled for today, April 13th, 2023 at 11 a.m. We notified owners within 300 feet of this project, and also notified several other individuals that have an interest in this hearing. Staff analysis has determined that the proposed development is listed as a permitted use in the Ocean Shores Municipal Code. Wetland and buffer exists on this parcel and surrounding parcel, which require the application for an approval of a reasonable use exception in order to impact these buffers. The purpose of the RUU is to allow use of the parcel that would be allowed as and is in otherwise all respects in accordance with requirements of the applicable development regulations of the city, meaning that the project, if there were no wetlands, could proceed without issue. That is the case here. We also need to demonstrate that all reasonable measures to avoid and minimize impact to any wetland areas or associated buffers, and that those have been applied. And the applicant demonstrates that the project has been approved under all federal and state regulatory programs applicable to the project. The only state or federal condition that would have been applicable was the release from EPA for development of the property after the remediation of the violation, and that has been completed. The required SEPA checklist under 19-18 and the MD&S were sent to the required agencies to be reviewed. The Department of Ecology comments were returned to the Planning Department on July 17th, 2019. The comments pertained mainly to the management practices dealing with solid waste generated on the site and stormwater generated discharges. A simplified stormwater pollution prevention plan will be required pursuant to the issuance of a clearing and grading permit, and erosion control measures will also be a condition of the clearing and grading permit should the hearing examiner approve the reasonable use exception. On December 31st, 2019, EPA received the final monitoring report. that certified the restoration activities being complete. In 2017, a wetland completed report, the planting, the as-built, the end of year one monitoring report, all of these documents, as outlined in the staff report, were submitted and approved. And then we get into the standard of review for the reasonable use exception, the criteria for the consideration before any conditional use or reasonable use exception is granted. It needs to be determined as consistent with the purpose of the district, applicable provisions of the comprehensive plan, and will not adversely affect other uses and properties in the immediate vicinity. And also that the granting of the permit would not reduce the dimensional requirements of the district. The Pike Hotel Motel is allowed in the B1 district under 1734-020. Permitted uses as follows. One of the listed permitted uses is a hotel or motel, which is the Pike project. Should the hearing examiner approve this development project as listed and apply the consideration of reasonable use exception for the zoning district, the planning recommends conditions as listed in addition to any conditions imposed by the hearing examiner. The construction must meet all current zoning, building, and fire code requirements. Adequate parking should be provided per the Ocean Shores Municipal Code. An approved storm drain design will need to be provided prior to any permits being issued. The landscaping plan, same thing as shown in Ocean Shores Municipal Code 1750-100. And then we have some other requirements that would pertain to a subdivision, and they are not applicable to this project. The final recommendation would be to craft and execute a wetland or wetland buffer mitigation plan that will compensate for impacts to the wetland buffer. This plan will include delineation fencing, a signage that will protect the unmitigated critical area during and after construction activities are complete. And the mitigation plan will all most likely involve purchase of credits in the City of Ocean Shores Weatherwax Wetland Mitigation Bank, which was established for this purpose. And that'll conclude my report.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. I do have quite a few questions for you, so bear with me. And as always, you can defer to the applicant or the applicant's expert as it is their burden. So first, the application, as you mentioned, was received on January 23rd, 2023. Is this the same date that the city deemed the application to be complete?
Yes.
Okay. And then regarding SEPA, I guess I'm confused a little bit. The MDNS was issued sometime in 2019. Was that for the same project that we're addressing here today?
Yes, it is. And the circumstance that brought that about is when I first started in the planning department, this project had already been proposed. And so the SEPA checklist was sent out at that time. Between the time that the SEPA checklist went out and the time that the RUE application took place, I had approved administratively several projects for buffer impacts only, not direct wetland impacts. And there was a point in there where the city's attorney advised me against that and wanted us to put those in front of a hearing examiner for that decision. And so there was a delay in the time that we started the process and the time that we got to this point of a hearing.
And notice for that prior MDNS, do you recall how that was provided at that time?
I cannot give you that detail off the top of my head.
Okay, just maybe jot that down. And then I've reviewed the comments from DOE on that MDNS. there's reference in there to 3 addresses. Are all those associated with this same lot?
So since the issuance of the MDNS, the 3 lots have been combined as the proposal is going to cross property lines between all 3 of those parcels. In order to do that, a lot combination was necessary. So the 3 lots have all been combined into one at this point.
Okay, great, thank you. And then there was a comment from DOE requesting, I guess, information on how the applicant would mitigate for impacts to the buffer. Was this followed up on at all? Do you know, was there?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, and then, yeah, maybe the applicant would know more about that. It would be helpful, Mr. Reed, if that MDNS were made part of this record. As well as the environmental checklist. Particularly, I'd like to review the conditions that the mitigation measures that were included with that MDNS. I think that would be.
Okay.
But in essence, the city is relying on this prior threshold determination for the current proposal. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay.
it is.
Thank you. And then, yeah, so we'll discuss submitting those additional documents for the record. And if you have more information on the notice that was provided, that would be great as well. And was this the only comment that the city received in response to that MDNS?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I would like to kind of discuss further the site conditions and history associated with this parcel. From the record, it appears that there was a wetland analysis that was performed. And it was determined that this wetland at issue is a Category 3 wetland. Is that correct?
Let's see, let me get into my notes here.
That's what the record seems to indicate.
Garner, do you want me to answer that? Marshall, do you want me to answer that?
You can.
Peregrine, would you like to swear in Key McMurray, their biologist?
Yeah, we'll swear you in real quick. Can you raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that to tell the truth in the testimony you give here today?
Yes, I do.
And can you state and spell your name for the record and explain your role with this project?
Yes, Key McMurray, Key McMurry, and I'm with Key Environmental Solutions, and I'm a professional stream and wildlife biologist and a professional wetland scientist. I am the applicant's expert on this case, and to answer your question, yes, it is a Category 3 wetland.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and then Mr. Reed, so I guess I have some questions about what the buffer requirements are for this wetland. The Ocean Shores Municipal Code is kind of interesting. A lot of codes I work with have specific buffer widths that are required for certain categories of wetland, but the Ocean Shores Code just references and incorporates some DOE manuals. I guess briefly, what is the required buffer for this wetland is my first question.
Can I defer to Key on that? I think she could probably provide a more thoughtful answer.
Yeah, generally we go, we kind of finish with the city and then go to the applicant, but I think here, this is our first RU. There's not a ton of members of the public, and I think the members that are here are really interested in this process. So I think it would be germane to kind of go back and forth if Key has information.
The required buffer would be 150 feet on this Category 3 wetland.
Okay.
One more thing.
Yes.
With it being 150 feet and there being a limited building envelope, that fully encumbered the building envelope, which required us to go through this mitigation sequencing and hence buying credits at the wetland mitigation bank and hence us at the roof.
Okay, I was just gonna ask a little bit about that. So, Mr. Reed, if you have the record available, I'm looking at the PDFs, the documents at the end of the latest packet that was sent out. And it's PDF 31, pages 31 through 33. These are the like aerial photographs of the site.
Okay, let me see if I can locate those. Do you have an exhibit number for that?
These are,
Guessing maybe 11. Is it on the delineation?
yeah, it's at there's the delineation information, and then there's 3 photographs.
Or at the very end? Okay.
Yes.
One of
So-
them that shows a general overview of the area. The second photo shows the wetland PEM 1C that's associated with this parcel. And then the area of impacts. Are those the 3 photos you're referring to?
Yeah, I'm actually referring, and then there's one more photograph that shows what appears to show the buffer extending over the entirety of the lot. That was one of my questions was,
That is correct.
okay, so the entire property is encumbered by this wetland and its associated buffer.
Yes, it is.
Okay, that was one of my questions. And then, so that first of 3 photographs that show the green areas, those are the delineated wetlands. Is this one wetland system that's on both sides of the parcel?
Yes, it is, and I don't know if I would use the term delineation here quite that strictly. These are maps that are used by the Department of Ecology and some of the other agencies to indicate more a general location of a wetland.
So these are potential critical areas.
That's how I view
Okay.
these. It's more important that we have a boots on the ground delineation to properly identify the boundaries.
And then, Key, it looked like you wanted to chime in there. Feel free. Go ahead.
That map is actually the National Wetland Inventory map, which is shot from such a high overview that it just gives a very wide range. So that is just a general sense of where the wetlands may occur. It's not an actual depiction and then not an actual delineation. And so, and the code is a freshwater wetland. And so to the west, it's showing that there is a potential freshwater wetland to the west also.
Okay. And then that next photograph that's got that blue area, I assume that blue area is the potential development area, the development envelope, so to speak.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I think I understand that. Let's see here. Oh, and then, so then turning to the site plan, so to speak, I think it's at the beginning of the packet. I have it as my 3rd PDF, page 3. Do you have that up, Mr. Reed?
I do.
So I guess I was just confused a little bit about this cross-hatched section here that seems to indicate the area of affected buffer would be only 625 square feet.
Yeah, that was a modification due to a fire department, the Hammerhead turnaround.
Okay. And then my understanding is this access way that's above the wetland on the east here, that already exists. This was something that was allowed through the EPA consent order.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, and that's going to remain in its current condition.
Yes, that's,
Okay,
it will become an improved access, but it's not going to expand the footprint.
Okay. That all makes sense to me. Okay, so I'm gonna now I'm gonna turn a little bit to the RU criteria. And it appears there's actually several sections of the municipal code that apply. So I think it would be kind of helpful, particularly with this first RU hearing, if we can kind of walk through these together. And, I would suggest that the applicant and the applicant's expert pay close attention here, because I may turn to you to address these. So first, under OSMC 1902-150B, it appears that the conditional use permit criteria of the code apply to RU applications, which you've addressed in the staff report and here this morning. But this provision also references criteria found in section 1902-090C. I'm going to bring those up here on my computer. And do you have that code in front of you, Mr. Reed?
I do.
Okay, great. So that'll just make this a little easier. So first, under subsection C1, there are, I guess, 5 avenues. Basically, this provision provides that development activity is prohibited within wetlands or buffers unless one of these 5 subsections are met. It doesn't appear that C2 through 5 apply. And so I assume that we're here today because we're acting under C1, which is hearing examiner review.
Right.
And then there are 3 additional subsections under C1. Under C1, first under C1, the hearing examiner must find that no practical alternative exists for the design, development, or use of the property that would not encroach on the wetland or buffer. So that's hasn't really been analyzed under the staff report. Can you speak to that? And if you're not prepared to do so, I have a suggestion, but if you can speak to that today.
Well, I guess I don't have an objective response to how we would look at this. From a subjective standpoint, the way these properties are platted in the downtown core and the way that all other uses have been formatted, typically these parcels are developed from property line to property line in their entirety. So in this case, it would not be possible to develop this property line to line without some sort of an encroachment into the wetland or wetland buffer. So we find that there is no practical alternative to develop this property to the extent that the proposal suggests without having an encroachment.
Yes, and then so that for that subsection C1B, which addresses that the prohibition against development in the wetland or wetland buffer would preclude a use of the property that would otherwise be allowed. I assume that since this entire property is encumbered by wetland or wetland buffer, that this particular criterion would be met here. Is that how you view this, Mr. Reed?
I do agree, yes.
Okay. And then subsection C1C then gives reference to subsection D of this code provision, which in turn requires that the proposed encroachment shall be the minimum necessary and shall be adequately mitigated. Is that how you understand this code provision to work?
That's my understanding, correct.
Okay, and then so can you address briefly, and we can turn to the applicant, how this project, how the proposed encroachment is the minimum necessary for this development, and speak to I know there isn't a final mitigation plan that's been prepared, and you've included a recommended condition addressing that, but There's a conceptual mitigation plan that you know of, if you could speak to that as well.
Is, as that pertains to avoidance and minimization? Is that kind of
Yes.
the
Yes.
information you're looking for? So the applicant in the design of this proposal, in an effort to demonstrate avoidance, has designed the site in such a way that the impacts to the wetland proper have been fully avoided. And to the extent possible, the applicant has set aside other certain areas that wouldn't be required for imperative function of the property as buffer as well. And then they've given a minimum 25-foot buffer around the wetland itself, demonstrating minimization of impacts to the buffer. So they've met the first criteria and the second criteria of avoidance, minimization, and then we're asking through the hearing process, or the applicant is asking through the hearing process, that they would be allowed to mitigate for the impacts that were not able to be avoided or minimized.
And as you mentioned, Mr. Reed, the city code does allow for compensatory mitigation, which you are assuming is going to be what's going to occur here.
Yes, that's my
Rather than
understanding.
in kind, okay. Thank you. And, should well, I guess let's go over the recommended conditions real quick. I think you're going to be out of the hot seat here soon, Mr. Reed, but really quickly, these first 5 are kind of standard. I've seen these kind of standard conditions for at least CUP matters, but you mentioned with regard to the 5th recommended condition that this wouldn't apply. Should we just strike that?
I didn't have the, and let's make sure we're looking at the same, the development activities are authorized as a part of an environmental enhancement rehabilitation mitigation project when completed. Is that the section you're referring to?
I'm looking at the city's recommended conditions.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
At page 4 and 5 of the staff report.
Okay. Yeah, conditions 4 and 5 do not have a significant amount of bearing on the mitigation of this project. They're more applicable to the land use elements of the project.
So would the city have any issue? Should I approve this application with striking those recommended conditions?
Let me read through them real quick and just
Sure.
make sure we're not going to miss something. Condition 5 can be stricken. I think condition 4 should stand.
What if I tweak it? Because I guess, are you relying on this kind of site plan as the landscaping plan?
When they submit their initial drawings to the plan set for review and building, then their site plan there should show a final or revised landscaping plan at that time.
Okay. Great. And then also, if should I approve this? I was looking at your recommended condition 6, and I think I would probably tweak that to require, just to specify for city review and approval prior to any construction.
Yes, the standard has been prior to the hearing process that I have a standard mitigation plan that identifies the amount of mitigation needed for the project, the cost per credit, and then we've been recording those against the parcel number once that mitigation plan has been executed, and then we report the transfer of credits to the interagency review team, which is a member of the Department of Ecology and one member from the Corps of Engineers. So we have already a format that I refer to, roughly as a wetland buffer mitigation plan.
Okay, yeah, and I would mention, with a lot of these, I have at least conceptual mitigation plan in the record to review, prior, and that's really helpful for me to see, at least on a conceptual level, that whatever mitigation would occur is at least feasible, particularly if there's in-kind mitigation being proposed. But here it's sounds like you can pay into a mitigation bank essentially, so not vital, I don't think.
Okay.
Okay, and then my final question for you, Mr. Reed, and just because I always ask, has the comprehensive plan, zoning ordinances, or critical areas ordinances been amended since the application was deemed complete in a manner that would impact this proposal?
No, they have not.
Okay, thank you. And doesn't appear you have any other members of city staff that wish to testify before I move to the applicant. Is that correct?
I don't believe so.
Okay, so we will turn to the applicant. Does the applicant want to provide testimony today, or the expert would?
If it's necessary,
It's not necessary. This would be your opportunity to provide any additional information that you want myself or members of the public to know before I issue a decision. So it's up to you.
okay, well, I do.
We'll go ahead and get you sworn in. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth in the testimony you give here today?
Yes.
And can you please state and spell your name for the record?
Elena Pike, ELENA PIKE. And I'm the owner of the parcel in question. And this is my husband, Ian. He's joining us today as well, so that he's in the loop of things. Yes, I just wanted to say that we've been long-term owners in Ocean Shores. We have multiple other properties in Ocean Shores, and we're greatly invested in the well-being of the city, and therefore we are very much interested in preserving the beauty and the natural feel of the area. We bought this parcel in 2018, and we knew that there was the wetland, and at that time there was an EPA requirement, so we followed that precisely. We fulfilled all the requirements, and we see this wetland as an enhancement of the lot. Really, we do not wish to endanger it in any way. We have restored the wetland as EPA has required, and we are determined to preserve it in a way that it is right now. We feel that it adds value and beauty to the lot, and it also provides for such a natural area, which is important not just for the town, but also for our guests. I feel like they will enjoy having beauty, natural beauty on each side of the property. As Marshall have stated before, and I agree completely, this lot is 100% encumbered by the wetland or the wetland buffer, and we feel like there has to be a mitigation to be able to use this lot reasonably, and our site plan and our efforts really are to minimize the impact, but to be able to use this lot. Otherwise, it is an unbuildable lot, and it would make no sense to even have anything with it. So we're very hopeful that you would agree with us, and that you would let us add to value to the city of Ocean Shores. We've been taxpayers for the last 9 years, and we hope to continue doing that. And I guess let me know if there are questions. If you want to add anything.
Thank you, Ms. Pike. I don't have any specific questions for you at the moment. Would Ian like to testify here today or?
Just in case, yes.
Okay, let's go ahead and swear you in. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth in the testimony you give here today?
Yes, I swear.
Okay, did you want to make any other comments about this proposal?
Pretty much my wife mentioned all of that, and I just completely agree with all what she said.
Okay, thank you for being here. I did have some questions for Ms. McMurray, if she would indulge me, and you can chime in, applicants, if you know the answers. So can you speak briefly to how the applicant is proposing to mitigate for these buffer impacts, if you have a concept in mind?
So Mr. Reed mentioned that the wetland weather wax mitigation bank has been created for instances just like this. And so the applicant does propose to purchase credits from the weather wax mitigation bank. And they have been great to work with. They knew that this lot had a wetland violation on it, and they have worked hard with EPA to resolve that wetland violation. They did not do the wetland violation. They bought it after the fact. And so they've been great to work with, and knowing that this wetland this parcel had this wetland violation on it, and working very hard to mitigate that, and also looking forward to building a usable hotel on it, and working with the city on their wetland mitigation bank. So that's why the mitigation bank was created, was to use it. And mitigation is already done in the bank. So that's why people are able to purchase credits from it.
Great, thank you very much. And then I think you heard my discussion, obviously, with Mr. Reed regarding these additional RU criteria.
Yes.
If you can briefly, I would just like this on the record, briefly speak to each of those. And I'll review those for you here, so you don't have to look at anything. The first one is that there's no practical alternative for the design, development, or use of the property that would not encroach on the wetland buffer.
I agree. I think that Marshall's done a great job, and also the applicants have, they've gone through many designs of repositioning, relocating, and minimizing their footprint. They've, reduced that buffer down by 25% on an already small buildable envelope. So I agree with Marshall that they've done that minimization and avoidance, and minimizing. I mean, I don't know how many different designs we've gone through on this to relocate and reposition to try to avoid as much impacts as we could.
Great, thank you. And then this one may seem obvious, but for the record, that the restriction against development in this buffer would preclude a reasonable use of the property.
Yes,
It encumbers the entire property, so.
100%.
Okay, great.
They have buffers coming from, I mean, it's not clearly shown. Marshall and I talked about it a little bit, but the buffer from the west also and fully encumbers across the parcel. So it didn't really need to be shown that both buffers are fully encumbering the property, because why? When one buffer fully encumbers it. I mean, so both buffers from the wetland from the west and the wetland on site fully encumbers the buildable area.
And then really quickly, that the wetland that's on the western portion of the property, is that also, that's a category 3 wetland with 150-foot buffer?
I think it would actually be a little bit more of a buffer, bigger buffer, but it has a fire break. The city has a fire break there. So there's a little bit of a break, but it still would be encumbering that buffer. It would be more of an interdunal wetland. So I think it would probably be a category 2 based on the interdunal wetland scores. But it would still, that buffer would still fully encumber the buildable area.
And there's no development proposed within the wetland itself, correct?
No, they can't.
Okay.
That's owned by the city, and there's a fire break there also. And you can't build out towards the any farther west than what is proposed by any development.
Great. And then did this could be for the applicant or the expert. Did you get a chance to review the city's recommended conditions that I had discussed with Mr. Marshall earlier? And do you have any issue with those conditions?
No, we do not. In fact, the stormwater drainage plan has already been drafted, and I believe I submitted it to Marshall, but I can resubmit it if you'd like. And of course, we will definitely follow the other instructions and requirements as well.
Yeah, and we received from the fire department recommendation for the turnaround. We also implemented in our new plan, so we just even removed a couple of the units we were originally planned to build, because we just need to follow these rules. And yeah, if there's also something's going to need to be implemented, we will do it for sure.
And have you had the chance to review the MDNS that was previously issued in 2019?
Could you please let us know what MDNS is? I'm sorry.
So that's the mitigated determination of non-significance, and those would include mitigation measures that you would have to follow. That I've asked Mr. Reed to provide that after this hearing for the record. So if Mr. Reed, can you make that available for the applicants as well when you submit that to me?
Yeah, I will. For some
Okay.
reason, I thought that was in this document. I'll do some checking. If I don't find it in the current exhibit, I thought it was either in the ecology comments preceding or following, or the US EPA consent order. I thought I put the SEPA in there. If it's not there, I'll make sure and provide the SEPA checklist and the MDNS to all parties.
Great, thank you. Was there anything else from the applicant or applicant's expert before I turn to see if there's any members of the public that would like to testify?
No, thank you, but I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much for being here. Okay, so now I know we have some interested observers. Is there any members of the public that would like to testify at this hearing today? If I can, I see that there's Tim, I believe Timothy Bryan. Are you interested in providing testimony today?
Not testimony. I'm just listening I'm going to be a part of one of these eventually. So I just
Great.
get an idea. Yeah.
All right, well, thank
And
you.
I want to just say that Elena, you guys did a great job. I got some good knowledge to follow on that. So thank you.
Thank you for being here today. And Christian, I see someone labeled Christian. Are you interested in providing testimony today?
Thank you for the invitation. No, not required. I think Key has done a very good presentation of topics, and I have nothing to add. As a point of interest, I and Key are both in the same industry. We do aquatic ecology work, wetland work, and we think that she did a good job in representing the project.
Great. Well, thank you for being here today. Okay, and then so Mr. Reed, there were some documents that I would request that you submit after the hearing, just to review those real quick. That would be I don't know if I actually addressed this, but I think it would be helpful. The staff report references some documents related to the remediation of this site, the wetland restoration plan and monitoring reports. Are those available?
Yeah, they were just fairly significant documents, and I figured I would provide those if required. In previous hearings, we were trying to kind of scale back what I was providing, and so this one here, if it's a vital information, I'm happy to provide that.
I may regret that request, depending on how
It's a big
large
document.
these are, but I think it would be helpful if for nothing else, to give me some background information on this parcel. I think it would be helpful if you could make those available.
Sure.
And then as we discussed, the actual MDNS and environmental checklist. And then if you have any information related to how notice was provided of that MDNS. That would be really helpful to my decision.
Okay, sure.
So, and then, again, because this is the first of these, and I don't think it's necessary, but it would be helpful, I think, if either the city, the applicant, or both could provide a, a short, just written narrative on addressing those 3 RUE criteria. I don't think it would have to be a very, 1 page, 1 little paragraph, but I think it would be good to have that analysis in the written record. So I guess I'll allow for the opportunity to do that if you wish. I think it would only help with this matter. So I don't think I need well, how long would it take you to produce those documents, Mr. Marshall, that I've requested?
Those could be provided most likely by the end of the day. I have those back in the office and can put my hands on those fairly quick. The narrative for the RUE criteria, probably within a day or so.
Would anyone have an issue if we left the record open for just a short time, let's say the end of Tuesday, to provide time for the city to submit those documents and the applicant to submit a narrative if they so wish?
Okay.
Yeah, that's all right.
Does that sound good with everybody? Okay, Tuesday. And then, Mr. Marshall, I guess the only other thing, unless you can point me in the direction of where I can find information on that mitigation bank and how that works. If you could provide a little bit more information on that, I just want to explain it in my decision, how that
Okay.
works, to provide guidance for future RUEs.
I can send you a link to it's available on the Department of Ecology's website under the Weather Wax Mitigation Bank heading. And I can provide you that link to the document that outlines the use of criteria, or the criteria for use of the bank.
That would be helpful. Thank you, Mr. Reed.
Then if you would like to see a boilerplate of the agreement that I typically assign to a project like this and how the credits are transferred, I can send you a copy of that, of one that we've done in the past, if you'd like.
I think that would be helpful. That, I don't think that'll be necessary for every one of these going forward, but I would like to gain some understanding of how that all works. I think that would be helpful. So I guess with that, is there any last thoughts from the applicant before I close this hearing?
Your Honor, really fast, so it gets determined what type of wetland it is, and then how big of impact. So the square footage of impacts determines how much credits they have to buy. And that is based on what type of wetland it is, what category of wetland it is. So
great.
the category of wetland, and then how big of buffer of impacts it is, square footage. And
Great.
then there is a ratio that has been developed, and then city has a price per square footage of impacts, and that's what the applicant would pay for the square footage of impacts.
Great. Yeah, and that's how I believe those typically work, those mitigation banks. So any last thoughts from yes, Mr. Reed?
I would like to enter into the record that we're showing that the total amount of impact is 0.57 acres, equal to 22,847 square feet. And I just want to make sure that if there's been a change to that number, either Key or the applicant can speak to that.
That is the correct number, Marshall.
Okay, thank you.
Great, perfect. Yeah, and that's, I see that on that, that's that blue developable area there, the 0.57 acres. Great. So I think I understand everything. Any last thoughts from the city or applicant? Thank you very much. So with that, and thank you everyone for your patience. I probably had more questions today than would be typical for this sort of hearing, but it is our first. I want to make sure we get it right. And so I just want to thank everyone for participating today. And I intend to issue a decision on this within 10 working days of the record closing at the end of the day, Tuesday. So thank you, and I hope everyone can enjoy the rest of your day.